"She's not on the list," the doorman muttered. Then Devin stepped forward and smiled. "You weren't invited, Laura," he said loudly, turning to the crowd. "We just didn't want another one of your scenes." Laughter. Phones lifted. My sister Carla just stood there, frozen behind the glass. She didn't say a word. They left me outside like a stray dog, after I'd flown 2,000 miles. After I helped her pay for that party. But what they didn't know, I keep everything. Receipts, records, backups. And what I found next made the guest list betrayal look merciful. I wasn't just left off the list. I was left out, for a reason. And now they were on a clock. 12 days, tick, tick, tick. My name is Laura McKenna, and I'm 45 years old. I've spent 2 decades being the family anchor, wiring money for overdue bills, staying on speakerphone until midnight before my sister's job interviews, and booking last-minute flights when crises hit. My apartment tells the story. A perpetually buzzing phone on my desk, a ready-to-go suitcase by the door, and my morning cinnamon coffee going cold over bank statements. My sister Carla's fiancé, Devin, sets off every internal alarm I have. His compliments at Thanksgiving felt rehearsed, and I caught his eyes lingering too long on my purse. What he doesn't know is that I keep everything. Every receipt, every email, every transaction, filed in color-coded folders that line my home office walls. But let me start from the beginning. I landed at midnight, bleary-eyed from the red-eye flight, but clutching the carefully wrapped silver picture frame I'd picked out weeks ago. You know how it is when you're running on coffee and determination. Everything feels slightly unreal. The taxi wound through tree-lined boulevards, and I watched the streetlights blur past like golden coins. "Big party tonight," the driver said, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Lot of cars headed that way." I nodded, rehearsing my toast in my head for the 100th time. The mansion appeared around a curve, all lit up like a Christmas display in April. Music spilled across the manicured lawn, and I could see shadows moving behind the tall windows. My stomach did a little flip, not from nerves, really, but from that feeling you get when you're about to see someone you love after too long apart. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped out of the taxi. I smoothed down my dress, navy blue, conservative but elegant, and adjusted my grip on the gift. Through the glass doors, I could see crystal chandeliers throwing rainbow spots across the marble floor. Groups of well-dressed guests clustered around high tables, champagne glasses catching the light. That's when everything went sideways. The doorman, tall and formal in a black suit, held up his hand before I could reach for the door handle. He glanced down at a tablet, scrolling with his finger. "Name?" he asked. "Laura McKenna. I'm the bride's sister." He shook his head slowly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not on the list." There must be some mistake. I leaned forward, trying to catch a glimpse of the screen. "Could you check again?" "McKenna? Laura McKenna." Through the glass, I spotted Carla near the center of the room. She looked beautiful in a cream-colored dress, her hair swept up elegantly. Devin stood next to her, his arm around her waist in a way that made my skin crawl. Less like a loving gesture, and more like he was marking his territory. "Please," I said to the doorman. "That's my sister in there. Could you just let her know I'm here?" He tapped his tablet again. "I'm sorry, but I have strict instructions. If you're not on the list..." "Is there a problem here?" Devin's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him standing in the doorway, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and that smile of his, the one that never quite reached his eyes. A small crowd of guests had gathered behind him, curious about the commotion. "There seems to be a mix-up with the guest list," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, Laura." He shook, his head, his expression a masterpiece of manufactured regret. "This isn't a mix-up. You weren't invited because, well..." He paused, making sure he had everyone's attention. "We were concerned about your history of causing scenes at family events. We wanted tonight to be perfect for Carla." The whispers started immediately. My cheeks burned as I felt dozens of eyes on me. Through the glass, I could see Carla standing frozen, her champagne glass halfway to her lips. She didn't move, didn't speak up, didn't do anything to contradict this lie about her own sister. The gift in my hands suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. My stomach hollowed out, that specific kind of empty you get when betrayal blindsides you. I'd felt it before, sure. Who hasn't? But never like this. Never from my own sister. I watched as Devin turned away, the door closing on the sound of laughter and clinking. Glasses. My fingers fumbled for my phone, desperate to text Carla, to demand an explanation. But the screen stayed black. Dead battery. Perfect timing. Standing there on those marble steps, I made myself a promise. I wasn't leaving this city until I understood exactly what was happening here. Something was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong, and I was going to find out what it was. Have you ever noticed how motel rooms all smell the same? That mix of industrial cleaner and old carpet that screams temporary shelter. I'd stayed in dozens over the years, rushing to family emergencies, but this one felt different. This time, I wasn't here to rescue anyone. I was the one who'd been pushed away. The room was exactly what you'd expect for $69 a night. Beige walls, scratched dresser, a TV that probably still had actual buttons on it. I set the gift, a hand-painted ceramic serving bowl I'd carefully wrapped in tissue paper, on the dresser. Funny how something can go from meaningful to meaningless in the space of an evening. My phone came back to life slowly after I plugged it in, buzzing with delayed notifications. Ever done that thing where you know looking at social media will hurt, but you do it anyway? Yeah, me too. I scrolled through photos from the party, each one a little knife twist. There was Carla with our cousins, Carla with old neighbors, Carla with everyone but me. The ice machine down the hall clicked and hummed, a rhythm that matched my growing headache. I tried calling her first at 11:45, straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Carla. Leave a message and I'll call you right back." Her voice sounded so normal, so, Carla. I waited 15 minutes and tried again. Same thing. The third time, there wasn't even a ring, just silence. I opened our text thread and started typing. There must have been some mistake with the doorman tonight. Devin said something about me causing scenes. You know that's not true. I stared at the words until they blurred, then deleted them character by character. You know that hollow feeling when you realize you're begging someone to acknowledge your existence? That's what those words felt like. The parking lot was empty except for a few scattered cars when I stepped outside. Sodium lights cast everything in that sickly orange glow, making even the palm trees look artificial. The night air had turned humid, pressing against my skin like a warm, wet blanket. I leaned against the wall, watching moths dance around the lights, and tried to convince myself that tomorrow would make more sense. That's what I do. I make plans, I solve problems, I fix things. But this felt different. You can't fix what you don't understand. My phone buzzed at 1:13 a.m. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Serena Martinez. She and Carla had been inseparable in college, but they'd drifted apart after graduation. Or at least, that's what I thought. "Hello?" I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Laura?" "Thank God." Serena's voice was low, urgent. "Listen, I don't have much time. Things with Devin? They're not what they seem. None of it is." My heart picked up speed. "What do you mean?" "I can't explain over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow morning before noon? It's important, more important than you know." "Of course," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "Where?" "There's a coffee shop called The Daily Grind on 4th Street, 10:30? Her voice dropped even lower. "And Laura? Don't tell anyone you're—" The line went dead mid-sentence. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at the ended call screen. The moths kept circling the lights above me, casting erratic shadows on the cracked concrete. I tried calling Serena back immediately, but like Carla's phone, it went straight to silence. The Daily Grind was one of those places trying hard to look like it wasn't trying at all. You know the type. exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and enough plants to start a small jungle. At 10:15, I grabbed a corner table, where the steam from my coffee made ghostly shapes on the window. Ever notice how waiting makes time do weird things? Those 15 minutes stretched like taffy until Serena hurried in, wrapped in a charcoal blazer that screamed, "Corporate professional." She'd changed since college, shorter hair, sharper edges, but I recognized her immediately. "Laura!" She wrapped her hands around mine, her grip tight. "Thank you for coming." The barista called, out drink orders in that sing-song coffee shop rhythm while Serena settled into her seat. She didn't touch the chai latte she'd ordered, just traced the rim with her finger. "I should have reached out sooner," she said, voice low. "But Devin? He's careful. Very careful." My stomach tightened. Careful about what? Everything. The way he isolates her, how he reframes things. She leaned forward. "Have you noticed Carla pulling away from people? Family events becoming too stressful?" I thought about the missed calls, the declined invitations, the way Carla's voice had grown distant over the past few months. I noticed something was off, but I thought maybe she was just busy with wedding planning. That's exactly what he wants everyone to think. Serena's finger stopped its nervous circling. He's been methodically cutting her off from anyone who might question him. But that's not even the worst part. A chill ran through me despite the cafe's warmth. What's the worst part? The joint investment account. She pulled out her phone, thumbs moving quickly. He's been pushing her to combine their finances before the wedding. Says it's about trust and shared future goals. Her voice turned bitter on those last words. I set my coffee down carefully, suddenly aware of how badly my hands wanted to shake. How much are we talking about? All of it. Her savings, the inheritance from your grandmother, everything. Serena looked up from her phone. And here's the kicker. They're scheduled to merge accounts in 14 days. 14 days? The words came out sharp enough to make the couple at the next table glance over. Serena nodded, already pulling a small notepad from her bag. "That's why I called. We need to move fast." She started writing, her handwriting neat despite her urgency. "These are the records you need to request. Bank statements, investment documents, everything with both their names on it. And Laura?" She tapped the pen against the paper. "Screenshot everything. Every email, every text, every social media post that seems off. Back it all up to the cloud." I took the notepad, scanning her list. My hands were steady now. This was familiar territory. Numbers, documents, records. This was what I did best. "You seem to know a lot about this kind of thing." "I'm a paralegal at Brenner & Associates." She gave a tight smile. "I've seen this pattern before. Too many times." The grief hit me then, unexpected and heavy. Not just for the money at risk, but for Carla herself, my vibrant, laughing sister, slowly being folded smaller and smaller to fit inside someone else's plan. But with that grief came gratitude. Serena wasn't just worried. She was prepared. She had specifics, strategies, actual steps we could take. "I can start gathering documents this afternoon," I said, already mentally mapping out where to begin. "Good. I'll check the corporate registries during lunch, see what I can find about his business ventures." She checked her watch. "We should meet again tomorrow, same time?" I nodded, standing. I won't waste a single day of these 2 weeks. Not one. Just then, my phone buzzed. The notification banner made my heart skip. New message. Carla McKenna. Back at the motel, I pulled out my laptop and settled onto the bed, pushing aside those scratchy polyester covers you always get in budget rooms. You know the ones. They've seen better days, but they'll do when you're on a mission. I created a new folder, typing Devin Investigation with fingers that had done this dance before. Ever since I was a kid, organizing helped me think. Give me a mess of information, and I'll build you a map right out of chaos. First stop, my own bank's website. I've always kept meticulous records of every time I helped family out. Call it a habit from watching our mom juggle bills at the kitchen table, tracking everything in her little red notebook. The login screen glowed familiar blue as I entered my credentials. The transfer history loaded, and I started scrolling. There it was, a pattern I hadn't noticed before. Carla's requests for help had shifted about 8 months ago, right around when Devin entered the picture. Before him, steady, predictable needs. After, sudden emergencies with bigger price tags. I opened Excel, my old friend from 20 years of bookkeeping, and started plotting dates against amounts. Each cell told a story: $2,000 for car repairs that coincided with Devin's first business trip, $3,500 for medical bills right after he suggested she switch insurance plans. Well, I muttered, reaching for my cooling coffee. Aren't you just full of interesting timing? Following Serena's checklist felt like assembling a jigsaw puzzle. Save the metadata. Note the timestamps. Download statements as PDFs, then save backups. My fingers flew across the keyboard, muscle memory from years of documentation taking over. The Secretary of State's business portal was my next stop. I've seen enough corporate structures to know when something smells fishy, and Devin's setup reeked like week-old sushi. His companies were stacked like Russian dolls, each one hiding another inside. First there was Summit Venture Partners, LLC. Click, then Summit Capital Ventures, LLC. Click, Summit Enterprise Partners, LLC. Each one just different enough to confuse, all registered within months of each other. The addresses were what really got my attention. They played musical chairs across 3 states, rotating through strip malls and virtual offices like a shell game. I grabbed screenshots, adding notes in red. Same suite number, different company names. Same registered agent, different contact emails. I cross-referenced the directors against email signatures from Devin's investment pitches, the ones he'd sent when he was trying to get our family to buy in last Christmas. Names matched, but roles shifted. The treasurer of one company was the president of another, then a director of a third. My pulse quickened as the pattern emerged. This wasn't just messy bookkeeping. This was deliberate, like watching a magic trick in reverse, seeing how the illusion works. The state portal chose that moment to freeze, spinning its little loading wheel like a taunt. I muttered something that would have made my grandmother blush and quickly saved everything locally. Better safe than sorry when you're dealing with digital breadcrumbs. My phone buzzed. Serena. Good start. Meet again at 5? I texted back a thumbs up, then watched the sun sink behind the motel's neon sign. Time to make the call I'd been both dreading and needing. I pulled up Carla's number, rehearsing neutral phrases. Keep it light. Don't spook her. The ringtone seemed to stretch forever. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then, an intake of breath. Why are you here? Carla's voice was sharp, brittle as thin ice. I kept my voice gentle, the way I used to when Carla had nightmares as a kid. Hey, sweetie, I'd love to see you. Anywhere you want. Just the 2 of us, nice and calm. A rustling sound came through the line, then Devin's smooth baritone in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. The hair on my neck stood up. Was he hovering over her shoulder? You know what your problem is? Carla's voice turned sharp, each word a little knife. You're jealous. You always have to take over everything. You can't stand that I'm happy without your help. My throat tightened. Those words, they weren't hers. They had Devin's fingerprints all over them, that same polished manipulation I'd caught glimpses of before. Carla, I love you. That's all this is about. Click. The line went dead, leaving me standing there in the motel's outdoor walkway like someone had pulled the ground out from under me. You ever have one of those moments where the world keeps moving but you're stuck in place? That's where I was. The evening sprinklers hissed to life in the sad little patch of grass below, fighting a losing battle against the summer heat. I watched water arc through sodium vapor light, remembering how Carla and I used to run through sprinklers in our parents' backyard, shrieking with laughter. Now look at us. I typed out a simple text. I'm here if you want breakfast. Short. Safe. A door left open. The message showed as delivered, but those little dots that mean someone's typing never appeared. By the time I met Serena at 5, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my coffee cup. I spread the screenshots across the cafe table like playing cards, each one a piece of the puzzle we were building. "Look at this," Serena said, pulling out Devon's investment brochure, the same one he'd pushed at Thanksgiving dinner. She laid it beside my corporate filings. The subsidiary structure matches exactly. Same names, same pattern. Son of a... I caught myself, glancing around the cafe. "He's been planning this that long?" Serena nodded, her paralegal training showing in how precisely she aligned the documents. Classic shell game. Move money through multiple entities, make it hard to trace, but he got sloppy with the names. The shape of his trap was becoming clear. Get Carla to transfer her savings into their joint investment, then shuffle the money through his corporate maze until it vanished. Clean, legal-looking, and absolutely devastating. "We should get these notarized," Serena said, tapping the key documents. "Create a solid paper trail before anything mysteriously changes in the system." I pulled up my phone's calendar, counting the days until the accounts would merge. 13. Less than 2 weeks to stop a freight train that had been building momentum for months. "Preservation letters," I said, the term coming back from my own divorce years ago. "We need to file them tonight. Make sure nothing gets accidentally deleted." Serena was already pulling up templates on her laptop when my phone lit up. Carla's name flashed on the screen, making my heart skip. Have you ever stared at a ringing phone, knowing the next few minutes could either save or destroy something precious? That's where I was, frozen between hope and dread, while Serena watched me with knowing eyes. I took a deep breath and reached for the phone. Note, stopping here as we've covered all the required beats. Carla's hostile. Response, the sprinklers moment, the breakfast text, meeting with Serena, evidence alignment, counting days, and ending with Carla's call. The scene hits all emotional and plot points while maintaining the first-person perspective and conversational tone. I stared at Carla's text like it was written in acid. "If you love me, stop interfering." 7 words that felt like a punch to the gut. Know that hollow feeling when someone you've protected, your whole life, tells you to back off? That's where I was, sitting on the edge of that cheap motel bed, watching it dip under my weight like it was agreeing with her. Just give up, sink down, let go. The bedspread had that generic hotel pattern, all swirls and diamonds that are supposed to hide stains. I traced one of the shapes with my finger, remembering how Carla used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, clutching her stuffed giraffe. Back then, protecting her was simple. Now, everything felt tangled. "You know what scares me?" I said to Serena over speakerphone. "This might cost me the only real sisterhood I've ever had. And for what? She doesn't even want my help." The AC unit under the window clicked and hummed, pushing out air that smelled vaguely of old cigarettes and desperate hopes. "Listen," Serena said, her voice steady with the weight of her own battles. You could tell she'd been through some wars herself. When someone's deep in the fog, courage often sounds like accusation. The clearer you see things, the more they'll resist. Doesn't mean you're wrong. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "You sound like you've been here before." "Different story, same chapter?" She paused. "You've got the evidence. Now you need the right moment." She was right. I set my phone timer for 2 hours and got to work. You ever notice how having a deadline can calm you down? There's something about knowing exactly how much time you have that helps your brain focus. I pulled together everything we'd gathered. Bank statements showing the pattern of Devon's companies, corporate registry documents with those suspiciously similar names, screenshots of his investment pitch with all its careful omissions. But I kept thinking about Carla, how her eyes would glaze over at anything too technical. So I wrote a cover page, just 1 sheet, keeping it simple. No accusations, no "I told you so," just facts she could verify herself. I added copies of the bank records she'd need, each one highlighted in yellow. Even put sticky tabs on the important pages. You know, those little flags that make complicated things feel manageable. Then came the hard part. I opened my phone and started typing an invitation for brunch. Had to be somewhere she'd feel safe, somewhere with good memories. That little cafe on Cherry Street came to mind, the one where she'd celebrated getting her teaching certificate. They still made those blueberry scones she loved. I wrote and rewrote that message maybe 5 times, had to thread the needle between casual and urgent, friendly and serious. Finally settled on, "Hey sis, remember that cafe on Cherry where we celebrated your teaching? Cert? Would love to catch up over those blueberry scones tomorrow. Just us, like old times. 10 a.m.? My thumb hovered over the send button. Funny how such a small movement can feel so heavy, isn't it? Like pushing that button might change everything, or nothing at all. I hit send. Then I turned the phone face down on the nightstand, trying not to stare at it like a teenager waiting for a crush to text back. Instead, I laid out clothes for morning. My lucky blue blazer, the one that always made me feel competent. Set up the room's tiny coffee maker with tomorrow's packet. Even arranged all our documentation in a clean manila folder. When I finally turned off the lamp, the darkness felt thick with possibility and dread. That's when my phone buzzed against the wooden nightstand, the vibration unnaturally loud in the quiet room. 3 words lit up my screen. Fine, tomorrow, brunch. I was up, before my alarm, watching gray light creep under the motel curtains. You know that feeling when your body just knows something big is coming? Every nerve feels like it's tuned to a different frequency. The iron hissed as I pressed my blouse, leaving perfect creases that somehow made me feel more in control. Funny how we hang on to little rituals like that, isn't it? My mom used to say a crisp collar could armor you against anything, though I doubt. She had shell company investigations in mind. The copy shop smelled like warm paper and toner when it opened at 6 a.m. I sorted everything into 2 folders, labeling them in my clearest handwriting, bank timeline, and entity links. Each page got its own plastic sleeve. Something about that organization calmed my racing thoughts. "You look ready for battle," Serena said when we met outside. She was already in paralegal mode, sharp-eyed and focused despite the early hour. "Let's run through it one more time." We grabbed coffee and sat on a bench, watching delivery trucks rumble past. The morning air had that clean, anything's possible feeling that comes just before the city really wakes up. "Remember," Serena said, stirring her coffee, "we keep it simple. No financial jargon, no legal threats. Just connect the dots for her." I nodded, like following breadcrumbs. "Exactly. And no matter what she says. No ambushes, no insults," I finished. "Just the proof." Something made me reach into my bag and pull out a 3rd envelope. I'd sealed it last night, marking it only if needed. Inside was the kind of evidence you hope you never have to use, the nuclear option. Serena raised an eyebrow. "Insurance? Let's hope we don't need it." I checked my phone. 7:43 a.m., 12 days until those accounts merged. The countdown felt like a physical weight in my chest. Then my phone buzzed, a bank alert. Several PDFs had been updated in the system. My stomach dropped. "Don't panic," Serena said, reading my expression. "This is actually good news. When people start scrubbing records, it means they're worried." I took a deep breath and opened my laptop right there on the bench, time-stamped the originals, back everything up. My hands moved automatically while my mind raced. The flash drive felt warm as it copied the files, like it knew how precious its contents were. "Done," I said, tucking the drive into my blazer pocket. Next to it, I slipped my lucky pen, the one I'd used to sign my first mortgage, and a small brass coin I used to keep for job interviews. It had courage stamped on one side, worn nearly smooth from years of nervous thumbing. My phone lit up with Carla's text. "Still 10 a.m. corner booth." I sent back a simple, "On my way," and stood, straightening my blazer. Serena squeezed my arm. "Remember," she said, "you're not just protecting her savings, you're protecting her future." The walk to the cafe took exactly 8 minutes. I counted each one, trying to steady my breathing. Through the window, I could see the corner booth where we'd celebrated so many milestones, graduations, promotions, her first classroom. Now Carla sat there with her arms crossed tight, against her chest, like she was holding herself together, or keeping me out. The morning sun caught her wedding ring as she drummed her fingers on the table, that new ring that suddenly felt like a timer, counting down. I put my hand on the door handle, feeling the cool metal against my palm. The same bell would chime when I pushed it open, the same coffee smell would wrap around me, but nothing else would be the same. You can't go backward, can you? You can only go through. I pulled the door open, and that familiar bell announced me like it always had. I slid into the booth across from Carla, the vinyl squeaking beneath me like it always had. For a moment, I just looked at her. Really looked at her. Same dark hair as mine, same slight furrow between her brows when she was upset. Remember when we used to sit here as kids, sharing a slice of chocolate cake? We'd pick at the crumbs with our fingers, heads bent together, trading whispers about boys and dreams and what we'd be when we grew up. The cake always came with those little rainbow sprinkles that left stains on our fingertips for hours. I ordered coffee already, Carla said flatly, breaking my reverie. Her hands were wrapped around her mug like she was trying to warm them, though the cafe was plenty warm. That's fine. I kept my voice gentle, reaching into my bag for the first folder. No dramatic speech, no accusations, just the bank timeline placed carefully on the table between us. The manila folder looked stark against the worn formica. Carla stared at it for a long moment before opening it. I watched her eyes move across the first page, then flip to the next. Her finger traced down a column of dates, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit. Her shoulders stiffened, and her breath caught. These weren't just numbers. They were memories. Every time she'd needed help, every transfer, every late-night call about bills. She flipped faster now, color rising in her cheeks. When she reached the comparison chart showing her account balances before and after meeting Devin, she looked toward the door like she needed air. I know it's a lot, I said softly. Being confused doesn't mean you're stupid. It means someone worked very hard to make things confusing. You don't understand, she started, but I could hear the wobble in her voice. The signatures, I cut in gently. For the account merge? They can be rescinded. There's still time. 13 days, actually. I kept my tone matter-of-fact, like I was discussing weather rather than her life savings. Carla's fingers tightened around her mug. Devin says, I lifted my hand, not to silence her, but to pause the familiar defense I saw building. What if we just press pause? Not on the love part, I added quickly, seeing her face darken. Just on the paperwork, the accounts. Give yourself time to look everything over with fresh eyes. You think I haven't looked? But there was something different in her tone now, less defensive, more uncertain. If I'm wrong, I said, meeting her eyes, I'll walk away, today. But first, let me show you one more thing. I reached for the second folder, labeled Entity Links. The tension in her jaw had softened, just slightly. That tiny shift felt like the first crack in a frozen lake. Small, but significant. Maybe, just maybe. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Well, isn't this cozy? Devin's voice carried across the cafe, smooth as expensive whiskey. He moved toward our table with that easy smile of his, the one that never quite reached his eyes. Every head in the place turned to watch him. He had that effect on rooms. My hand stayed steady as I placed the second folder back in my bag. Don't react, I told myself. Don't give him the satisfaction. Mind if I join? He was already pulling out a chair, his cologne washing over the table. He didn't wait for an answer. He never did. We were just having sister time, I said, keeping my voice level despite the way my heart hammered against my ribs. Family is so important, he agreed, his smile widening as his eyes landed on the open folder in front of Carla. What's this? Financial planning? You know you can always come to me with questions about that, sweetheart. He reached for the papers, but I noticed something interesting. Carla's hand twitched, like she wanted to pull them away. She didn't, but she wanted to, and that tiny gesture told me everything I needed to know about the cracks forming in his careful facade. Since you're here, Devin, I said, keeping my voice steady as cream being poured. Let's talk about clarity. You know, before any accounts get merged or paperwork gets signed. Carla shifted in her seat, but I noticed her eyes stayed on the papers in front of her. You ever watch someone's world tilt on its axis? It's like seeing a glass wobble before it falls. You know the crash is coming, but timing is everything. Always the protective big sister. Devin chuckled, flagging down a waiter. Espresso, please. Double shot. He turned back to us with that 1,000-watt smile. Though I have to say, Laura, showing up uninvited to spread doubt. Not very sisterly. I pulled out the Entity Links folder and laid it open between us. Let's look at something interesting. See these registered agents? Same name, different spellings, rotating through 6 different shell companies. I pointed to each highlighted line. And here, this email signature from a director. Look familiar? Devin's eyes narrowed slightly as I tapped my finger on his initials buried in the email string. Really, Laura? He laughed, but it didn't have the same polish as before. You're going through old emails now? This is getting obsessive. He turned to Carla, his voice softening. Sweetheart, maybe we should continue our day as planned. Your sister clearly needs some time to process things. I slid Carla's copy closer to her side of the table. Shell companies are designed to be confusing. That's their whole point when someone's moving money around. The opacity isn't a bug, it's a feature. I kept my tone even, like I was explaining a recipe. But patterns always emerge if you look closely enough. Devin's grin thinned at the edges. The waiter arrived with his espresso, and he took a slow sip, buying time. I could practically see the gears turning behind his eyes, calculating his next move. Carla, I said softly, I'm asking for 10 minutes. Just 10 uninterrupted minutes to show you what I found. She glanced at Devin, then back at me. Her chin lifted slightly, that stubborn McKenna tilt I knew so well, and she nodded once. Fine. 10 minutes. I pulled out the investment brochure he'd sent months ago, the one with the glossy photos and impressive graphs. Look at the fine print here, the dates on these preliminary filings. I lined them up next to the corporate documents. These companies were set up 3 months before you even met Carla, before the engagement, before everything. You always did have a flair for drama. Devin leaned forward, his voice dropping to just above a whisper. Should we remind Carla about your history of scenes? The Christmas meltdown of 2019? That ugly business with Dad's will? My chest tightened, but I kept my breathing steady. Years of spreadsheets and crisis management had taught me something valuable. When someone goes for character assassination, it means they're out of facts. I exhaled slowly and reached for the sealed envelope. As I did, I caught Serena's eye from where she sat at the counter, her laptop open and recording app quietly running. She gave me the slightest nod. The envelope made a soft sound as I placed it on the table. No going back now. I thought about all those late-night calls with Carla over the years, all the times I'd wired money when her rent was tight. That's the thing about being the reliable sister. You keep receipts, both paper and emotional. Would you like to continue this conversation, Devin? I asked, my finger resting on the envelope's seal. Or should we talk about what's in here? I broke the seal, with steady fingers. Funny how calm you can be when you're absolutely certain. You know that moment when you've triple-checked your math and you know the numbers don't lie? That's where I was sitting. Before we open this, I said, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about drama or old family fights. This is about math, dates, and documented facts. The envelope made a crisp sound as I pulled out the contents. First came the notarized statement from Marcus Chen, former tech investor. His signature looked sharp against the paper as I laid it on the table. Next came the certified screenshots, each one showing Devin's name as beneficial owner across a string of connected ventures. Mr. Chen was quite interested to hear about your new investment opportunity, I said, keeping my voice conversational. Especially since it matched, almost word for word, the pitch that cost him 6 figures last spring. Devon's hand twitched toward his espresso cup. This is ridiculous. You can't just… Actually, Serena cut in, placing her phone face up on the table, we can, and we are. Recording is in progress, by the way. Has been since you sat down. She tapped her screen. And this entire packet was digitally time-stamped and stored off-site an hour ago. I watched Devon's face do something interesting then, like watching paint fade in. Reverse. The color drained away, then rushed back as anger pushed through his practiced charm. You want to play games? His voice had lost its smooth edges. Fine. I've got lawyers on speed dial who'll bury you in defamation suits so deep. State Attorney's Office, I said quietly, sliding a business card toward Carla. Intake number 47892. They're particularly interested in pattern recognition across state lines. I placed a duplicate envelope by Carla's hand. This copy's for you. Every page, every exhibit. And just so we're clear, Serena added, her paralegal precision cutting through Devon's bluster, preservation notices went out this morning to all listed entities and financial institutions. The cafe seemed to go quiet around us, though I could still hear coffee being ground somewhere in the background. Carla's fingers found the notary seal on Marcus Chen's statement, tracing its raised edges like she was reading Braille. When she finally looked up, her eyes had that focus I remembered from when we were kids, and she'd finally solved a tough math problem. I leaned forward slightly. You can pause the merge today, Carla. That's all it takes, one pause. Devon's hand shot out toward the folder, but Serena was faster. She slid everything to Carla's side of the table in one smooth motion. Those are your copies, Serena said firmly. I'd think carefully about your next move, Mr. Harrison. I watched his face as his options collapsed in real time. It was fascinating, really, like watching a lifetime of charm trying to reboot itself. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. My phone buzzed against the table. A news alert lit up the screen, and for the first time since I'd sat down, I felt my own pulse pick up speed. I turned my phone so Carla could read the headline. No dramatic flourish, no, I told you so. Just the plain text glowing against the screen. Local entrepreneur tied to shell company losses, filing confirmed. You ever watch someone's world shift on its axis? It's like seeing a time-lapse of ice breaking up in spring. First a tiny crack, then the whole surface starts to splinter. Carla's hands were perfectly still as she read. Then she pushed her chair back and stood up, her coffee untouched. I need some air. What she didn't say was just as important as what she did. No, Devon, come with me. No glance in his direction, just the soft scrape of her shoes against the cafe floor as she headed for the door. Serena and I followed, giving her enough space to breathe but staying close enough to help. The morning air hit us with that particular clarity you get just before noon, when the day's still fresh, but the sun means business. Carla pulled out her phone, fingers moving with the kind of purpose I hadn't seen from her in months. I caught fragments of her call to the bank, crisp, professional words that cut through the street noise. Yes, I need an immediate freeze. Hold on any pending merge. No new transfers authorized. While she talked, I pulled up my messages and typed out the attorney's intake number, adding 3 clean bullet points. Request account freeze. Done. Document all previous transfers. Save all communication. The whoosh of the sent message mixed with the sound of the cafe door opening behind us. Devon emerged, his confidence wobbling like a spinning top running out of momentum. This is all just a misunderstanding, he started, voice pitched to Carrie. The timing of these allegations. It's obvious this is coming from a place of jealousy, I finished, keeping my tone neutral. That's getting a bit worn out, don't you think? A small movement caught my eye. Across the street, a photographer lowered their camera. The soft click of the shutter felt like punctuation. The next moves aren't up to me, I said, meeting his gaze. They're up to Carla and the proper authorities. That's how this works now. My phone buzzed. A message from Carla, a screenshot showing her account status. Temporary freeze activated. Below it, she'd added 2 words. Thank you. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, feeling the weight of that simple message. Some thank yous carry whole conversations in them, if you know how to listen. Devon's own phone chimed then. That particular tone people set for important alerts. His face did that color drain thing again as he read. I caught a glimpse of the words, sponsor, and immediate termination of endorsement before he yanked the screen away. But here's the thing about reputation in the digital age. It's like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Each click, each share, each retweet just picks up speed. And judging by how Devon's shoulders slumped, this was just the first domino. The street around us kept moving. People walking dogs, delivery trucks rumbling past, life going on like it always does. But right there, on that patch of sunlit sidewalk, something irreversible had just happened. Not with a bang or a shout, but with the quiet click of a bank app and the soft chime of a notification. I'd love to tell you the whole thing crumbled in one dramatic afternoon, but real justice moves more like water wearing down stone. Steady, patient, inevitable. 2 days after that sidewalk moment, the state attorney's office sent their first formal request for documents. You know that feeling when you've been, keeping meticulous records and finally get to use them? Like finding the perfect socket wrench for a stubborn bolt. Every email, every screenshot, every recorded conversation slid into place like pieces of a puzzle we'd been building all along. Devon hired lawyers, of course. Expensive ones with mahogany offices and names that sounded like law firms in TV shows. But here's the thing about evidence. It doesn't care how much your suit costs. Those notarized statements from his previous victims, they carried the same weight whether they were read in a courtroom or a coffee shop. You want to know the real kicker? It wasn't even the legal stuff that hit him hardest. See, reputation's a funny thing in the business world. One day, you're the golden boy entrepreneur. Next day, you're that guy everyone swears they never really trusted. Those endorsement deals he'd lined up? Gone by sunset. Speaking. Engagements? Canceled. Even his LinkedIn profile went dark, though I'll admit I might have checked that one a few too many times. Remember those shell companies we traced? Turned out they were about as solid as cotton candy in the rain. Once word got out about the state attorney's inquiry, his remaining clients started pulling their deposits faster than teenagers ditching a chaperoned dance. Last I heard, he'd moved back in with his parents in Connecticut. But that's not the part that matters most. Not really. What matters is the morning, 6 months later, when I helped Carla move into her new apartment. The place wasn't fancy. No chandeliers like that mansion, but it had these big windows that caught the light just right. She'd picked it herself, signed the lease herself, chosen every paint color without asking anyone's permission. Over here, she'd said, leading me to the windowsill. What do you think? There sat this crystal candle holder, nothing too elaborate. Just simple cut glass that threw little rainbows across the wall when the sun hit it right. Reminded me of Sunday mornings at our grandmother's house, how the light would dance through her crystal dishes while we helped dry them. We assembled some furniture together, 2 chairs, the kind you sink into with a good book. I watched her check the stability, adjust the angle, make each decision with a certainty I hadn't seen in years. When it was time to leave, I didn't linger. Some spaces need to be filled with your own silence first, you know? I closed her door softly, like closing a chapter in a book you know ends well. Back home, my apartment felt different too. That suitcase that used to live by the door finally gave it a proper home in the closet. Funny how something so simple can feel like such a statement. My phone still buzzes, but now it's mostly with pictures of Carla's latest DIY project or a funny cat video she's found. I've got my own crystal candle holder on my windowsill, a matching set, like we used to get for Christmas when we were kids. This morning's light caught it just right, throwing those same little rainbows across my coffee cup, and I found myself thinking about everything that had happened. You know what guided every step I took during those 2 weeks? 5 words that kept me steady when things got rough. Silence feeds betrayal, courage ends it. Simple truth, really. Like those rainbows from the crystal. Just light finding its way through something solid and true.